Welcome to Notes from Nature in memory of my dear friend David King. First of all, an apology. Given that this podcast reviews January, it was supposed to be released in the first couple of days of February. I am not a techno kind of girl, and it took me a while to figure out how to do this. I thought I had it figured out, I didn't. Blah, blah, blah. Here we are. Today is the 12th of February. Marches will be released in the first few days of March. Now I've figured out how to do it. So when imagining this podcast, I always imagined it to feel like chatting to a friend over a cup of tea. So go grab that cup of tea, grab a biscuit, have a piece of fruit if you're being good, and let's sit together for 10 minutes and figure out what's what. I should probably mention, for those of you that find this podcast by chance, Dave was a brilliant man. He collected weather lore, studied ancient records, and compiled accounts of weather observations for over 50 years. This enabled him to create his own detailed methodology, which was widely recognised as up to 90% accurate 90 days ahead, and in some cases up to 180 days ahead. He became the foremost authority in nature-based forecasting, and he shared his knowledge freely for all. He was probably most well known for his regular appearances on ITV This Morning. I'm Leslie. I was an avid fan of David's since 2018. In 2023, David announced that he was retiring, and he mentored me to take the reins over from him. In his words, so his life's work wouldn't be left to wither on the vine. As always, Dave's foresight turned out absolutely correct. My dear friend David passed away in November 2025, and so for me 2026 is all about honouring his legacy. That's why we're running 365 Days of Dave on social media. I thought adding a monthly podcast could be a nice touch. So using Dave's teachings, what did I observe in January 2026 and what would Dave make of it? Well, first we have to go back a bit to December 21st, St Thomas's. The wind direction for the majority was easterly, later swinging northeasterly. This wind direction will therefore remain predominant until the next such quarter day in March. Nature-wise, food remains in abundance. Hawthorn, holly, ivy, berberis, guelder, cotoneaster, pyracantha. Also, it's worth noting the ivy is already on its third generation of berries, and Dave always went to great lengths to remind everybody how important ivy is. It's the sole nectar-bearing plant during the winter months. It attracts insects, which is protein for the birds, and its leaves are waterproof and windproof. And the leaves also generally catch a bit of water as well, so it really is an all-encompassing plant for our birds, and its importance cannot be overstated. And Dave always went to great lengths to point this out because it's so common to want to rip ivy down. And yes, it can be quite invasive, but it is crucial for the birds. So in his honour, I'm doing exactly what Dave would do and just reminding everyone how important ivy is. In many areas, wildflowers are well ahead this year, especially down south, but I think in other places too, by the sounds of it. Daffodils, snowdrops, tulips, we've had them for a while now, which is really ahead of schedule. Lichen as well is widespread and thriving. If you go for a walk in the woodlands right now, if you look beneath the hedgerows, you may well see a scurrying dormouse collecting food, which is a sure sign of cold weather to come. You might too have noticed how busy the squirrels are. You do not have to go into the woodlands for this. If you take a walk down your road, you'll find them scurrying along the pavements with you. They certainly are here. In fact, I bet you if you go and sit in your garden quietly with a cup of tea for 20 minutes, you will see squirrels busy at work. If you do happen to go onto a woodland or forest type walk, woodpeckers are also working hard and you will hear them at the moment. And birds in general are on a feeding frenzy. You may too have noticed the trees are full to the brim with seeds, and of course at this time of year it becomes very clear to see because there are not any leaves to distract the eye. You just see the giant seed pods hanging. They are everywhere, so next time you're on a walk, just look up at the trees and see the amount of seeds we're left to deal with this winter. Happily as well, gorse is appearing to brighten the winter gloom everywhere. I love gorse. That little pop of yellow in the winter makes such a difference. Fruit tree wise, there are dormant buds everywhere, crucially tight, patient and plentiful. In conjunction with the Christmas Day thaw and the brilliant sunshine we experienced from dawn to dusk, we will have another excellent fruit harvest this year. I'm going to come on to the saws now, and Dave believed they played an important part in the overall picture, but they must be used in conjunction with the wind days and nature signs and the moon phases, or they're completely useless. So when I'm sharing a specific saw on 365 Days of Dave, don't get too depressed by it if it's predicting rain or cloud or whatever, because it can't be used in that way. In fact, Dave's order of preference for prediction was number 1, wind direction, number 2, moon phases, number 3, signs from nature, number 4, saws. So they are all an important part of the jigsaw that makes up Dave's remarkable methodology, but you cannot use one piece of information as gospel because it just doesn't work like that. I can't, of course, go through every single January saw here. We would be here an hour, and I always designed this podcast to be about 10 minutes, as if we're two friends chatting over a cup of tea. But I've highlighted some of the key ones and what I think from what I've learned in January. So I will try and explain why I think they're important ones and why I've highlighted them as I go through. So January 1st, the grass wasn't growing. So 2 good hay harvests can be expected this year. And that's a good one because it was also backed up by that Christmas Day sunshine I've already spoken about. The weather on the 10th of January is also worth noticing because it gave interesting clues about October's weather. And the reason I pulled this date out specifically is that what we saw tied up with the moon phases for October perfectly. October will be cool, sunny and beautiful in 2026. The 12th is another one worth pulling out because if the sun had shone this day, you could reasonably expect a windy year, but there was no sun. As such, not a particularly windy year ahead. Having said that, January the 21st did provide some important clues that March could be a windy month, and that also ties in with the moon phases, so well worth bearing in mind. The 13th was, of course, St Hilary, which can foretell the weather for the whole year in advance. Having said that, Dave felt this tailed off after about 6 months. It was a rainy day, so I don't want to dwell on this too much. I'm sure, like me, you're dreaming of sunshine already. Fog in January brings a wet spring. This is another one that stood out because January certainly started off with well above average numbers of freezing fogs. The 15th, St Paul the Hermit. If rain or snow falls on this day, it foretells a blessed year. It rained and then some. I think we're going to have excellent harvest conditions this year. January the 22nd provided clues to a classic April. Changeable skies and April showers probably lie ahead, which again ties in really well with what the moon's phases are telling us for this time. And the 23rd gave us clues on having a golden opening to May. Again worth mentioning as this ties up so well with the moon phases. The 25th is St Paul's, an unofficial day of prediction. Pretty grotty, I don't want to dwell on it. The 28th of January gave us yet more evidence for blue skies in October. I'm locking this one in, guys. October 2026 is going to be amazing. Fog twice in one day, ice not far away. Now, I've not published this on the website and neither did Dave because interestingly, I found this little gem in his reviewing folder because so many of you were reaching out and saying we're having we're having fog in the morning and again in the evening. What does this mean? Well, it turns out Dave was reviewing this saw that says when you have a double-ended fog like that, ice is probably not too far around the corner. And to be honest, looking at the weather forecast, the colder weather is coming in the next few days. So there might be a lot more truth to this one than meets the eye. And I am going to probably, if this proves true, bump it up from the reviewing folder and pop it onto the website. I will keep you posted. This whole process is so much more long-winded than you would possibly imagine. Poor Dave has to review these things and keep them in his review folder for 5 years before he could bump one up to be considered good enough and reliable enough for the website. So I don't know how long this one's been in his reviewing folder, but if it pays off this time, I'm going to bump it up and see where we go. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to Notes from Nature for January 2026. If you do have any ideas about how it could be better or what you kind of want to listen to, let me know, reach out. I'm always on the other end of an email. And February's will be released during those first few days of March. I just need a few days at the end of each month to kind of close my review notes and figure out what it is that I'm thinking. So I'll finish by saying, on the 31st of January, we held an online goodbye gathering in Dave's honour, and I'd like to finish off this podcast by sharing the words I shared that evening with you. It feels fitting. Dave loved people. He loved stories. He loved the weather, the countryside, and mostly he loved connection. And I think he'd be quietly chuffed seeing this many people come together because of him. Dave had a rare gift for noticing things, not just the weather, but people. He made you feel seen, and he shared what he knew generously and without ego. He taught us to look up, to look around, and to pay attention. So this isn't really a goodbye, it's just a pause. Dave's voice, his work, his way of seeing the world, that's still out there. It's in the sky, in the seasons, and in the conversations that we keep having because of him. So thank you for raising a glass, or in this case, a cup of tea, and for sharing your memories and carrying a little bit of Dave with you wherever you go. Thanks so much, and speak to you next month.